What's up, everybody? We are live over there on YouTube. Let's go ahead and add in our friends over there on Facebook and on Twitter, and then we're going to get underway. All right. We're live on Twitter, and now we are officially live on Facebook. And the Falcons Podcast with Garrett Chapman is officially underway. Happy Thursday, everybody. February 5th, another very important day here as we ramp up towards Super Bowl 60 on Sunday. And then we're officially into the offseason. It's the dreaded part of year where all we do is chatter. That's where people like me get to make their money, right? That's where I get to just sit here and run my mouth for the next couple of months. But look, this is a big time of year, and thank you so much for jumping in. We got a big show set up for you here this evening. Big thank you to all of you who do follow me over there on Twitter, all of you who are subscribed to the podcast. Big thank you to you. But if you're not, take a look. Check real quick. Make sure you are following. Make sure you are subscribed. Just takes you a second, and then you can stay fully up to date on everything that we have coming out here on Falcons on SI and this Falcons podcast. But make sure to like the video. Make sure to share it with your friends so that they can get in on some of this Falcons discussion. But tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the things that we wanted to talk about on Tuesday. We do this every Tuesday and Thursday. So make sure to set your reminder. Make sure to jump in here and dig into some Falcons football every Tuesday and Thursday. One thing we missed from last week is what do we make of this new look offensive staff for the Falcons? I want to talk about that in a little bit. And I also want to talk just about the 5 things that the Falcons can do to reach the playoffs in 2026. Finally reach the postseason. It's been a long time. 2017, that was the last time the Falcons made the postseason. Hell, that was the last time the Falcons had a winning record. Tough time. It matches the longest drought in Falcons franchise history. It's been since, I think it's the 70s or something like that. It's been a long time that the Falcons have had this level of struggles, I guess you could say. But of course, as always, I will take your questions. I will take your comments. If you have anything that you want to add to the program, throw it into the comment section right over there, and I will check it out. And I'll get to as much as I possibly can. The number one way to get to the front of the line is super chats. Those are the best way to get your name right to the front and make sure that your question is answered or at least addressed. I'll do my best to answer every question that I can, but I will at least I guarantee you that I will at least address it. But I see some people are already in the chat here. Let's see. Floyd Donnelly, he says, Rise Up Stefanski era has arrived. Yes, it absolutely has. He also comes back just, hey, Garrett. Hello, Floyd. It's great to see you. Welcome back in. T401 Dive Bomb. It says Dirty Bird Dance. Yeah, we got a bunch of people in the chat. Make sure to share it with your friends. Make sure let's get this thing rolling. But oh, shoot. And Rio came in here. The most infuriating thing about the Falcons is not that they suck, but they are horrible at winning games consistently. Well, that kind of goes hand in hand, Rio. But yeah, I see what you're saying. They can beat anyone and lose to anyone. You saw that perfectly last year. So this is a team who lost to the Dolphins. They lost to the Jets. They lost to the Panthers twice, once by 30 points, right? And then the second one, you blow a massive second half lead. And it was, if you just told me that, I would have told you this was a terrible season. But if you had also told me that they would beat the Rams, they'd beat the Bills, they'd beat the Bucks on Thursday Night Football, the rest of the division would have finished below 500. I'd have told you that this Falcons team is going to the playoffs. Yeah. So I see what you're saying. It is absolutely the infuriating part of it. It's one of the many infuriating parts of this team, right? There's a reason they haven't had a winning record in 8 years. There's a reason they haven't been to the playoffs in 8 years. Because they lose games, right? And they lose games they're supposed to win. Sometimes they win games that they're supposed to lose, but it doesn't happen enough to counteract the fact that they're losing to bad football teams. It's a frustrating aspect of this team, and I think it's a systemic thing, and that's why you saw Arthur Blank make the changes that he did. Shoot, man, you completely restructured the organization to a point where Arthur Blank, technically speaking, I mean, he's still the owner. He's still going to make the ultimate final say. He can fire Matt Ryan tomorrow, right? He can still be that guy. But Matt Ryan's making decisions. Matt Ryan is the guy who is ultimately going to be the guy who's pointing the beacon, right? He's pointing the ship, right? He is the compass, okay? Ian Cunningham might be the captain and Kevin Stefanski. I'm stuck on this boat metaphor, but whatever. He's not the first mate, but he's like also another captain. I don't know. He's the fleet commander, and they're steering these two boats, and he's making sure that they're going in the right direction. I don't know why I'm so married to this boat analogy here, but it's kind of the best way to say it. He just makes sure that they stay in line. Right. And his comments today actually kind of reflected that fact. But Rio, I mean, I see your point, and it's one of the reasons they haven't made the postseason. But it goes back to some comments that were made on Tuesday. And look, I reacted to the way that I heard Matt Ryan comment on the quarterback position. I reacted in the same way that a lot of people did, basically saying that, yeah, he didn't commit. He was non-committal because he was non-committal, but it was also non-committal in the sense that he's letting Kevin Stefanski make the final say on the quarterback position. There's going to be some collaboration. They're going to work together to make sure that they have a shared vision and they're going the right direction and all that stuff. But he reiterated that with Jonathan Jones on CBS today. Matt Ryan, he sits down. He's out there at Super Bowl 60 doing all the media stuff. And he sits down and they have that conversation. He says, I'm not doing his job for him. I'm not telling him that he has to start this person or he's got to run those plays and whatever. He's the head coach. He hired the head coach to do the head coach's job. That's all it is. And I was alluding to that on Tuesday, but I apparently didn't do a good enough job of that. Ultimately, his job is to run the organization, make sure that the guys have their resources and everything that they need to win and succeed. Ian Cunningham's the general manager. He's going to make personnel decisions. They'll all sit in those conversations. They'll have dialogue, right? And if they come to Matt, then they'll talk about it. But Kevin Stefanski is going to coach, So thank you for the question. Appreciate the comment. Floyd comes back, says, run the ball. It helps. And I think Bijan Robinson's going to be pretty happy about it. I think that he talked about how excited he was. He was out there out in, I don't know if they're in Santa Clara or they're in San Francisco right now, but they're out in California ahead of Super Bowl 60. He's talking about how excited he is about having Kevin Stefanski and shoot some of the best years that he had with the Cleveland Browns, Stefanski. It's because he had a Nick Chubb who was going off. Those are some of the best years that they had. They're going to run the ball. And I love the fact that we're bringing in a Bill Callahan, a guy who can do a lot of different things. He has that gap scheme. He can. You have the wide zone. You can do a lot of different stuff. And Bijan is one of the few running backs in the NFL that I would say is he's not dependent on scheme. He can do anything in any offense. He's special in that way, right? So he's just a plug and play, but they're going to run the ball a good bit. I would figure to say, right? So yeah, I think you're going to get your wish there, Floyd. Leon says hello. What up, man? Welcome in. Christopher Rome says we're going to be all right. I hope so. Eric Noah comes back through, says this team needs to be fixed fundamentally. If we have bad quarterback play, this team will never go anywhere. That is a fundamental issue. And look, that's going to get us into kind of my point for the crux of what I'm speaking about tonight. The 5 keys to the Falcons reaching the playoffs next year. We're going to see your question. It's a good question. I'll get to that in a little bit. But if you have bad quarterback play, it's not going anywhere, right? So if you talk about the 5 keys to the Falcons getting back to the postseason for the first time since our president of football is playing, it comes down to these 5 things, in my opinion. So I'll get to quarterback. The first things first. I'm looking at the top 4 teams, right? I think that's generally speaking the most effective way of addressing what direction the NFL is going, what's working in the NFL right now. Of course, there's some luck involved in this, but I think generally speaking, when you have a sample size of a full season and the final 4 teams are decided, the teams playing in the conference championship games, and then inevitably in the Super Bowl, everybody's sitting there watching on their couches and saying, how can I do that? How can I get there? And these are the things that I came up with, right? So the first thing's pretty simple. Double down on the defensive success from 2025. And I'm doing this all in and how it relates to the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta was solid last year. They were solid, right? We saw some spurts in the first half of the year where they were number 1 in total defense and everything else. They regressed, obviously. But they still finished in the top half of the NFL in terms of total defense and passing defense, top 20 in scoring and EPA, expected points added. per play. I mean, like they finished pretty good spot there, right? You also saw some of the injuries that took place on this defense and how they really regressed after that fact. Like you see when Divine Diablo goes down with an injury. Whew, it was tough. It was really tough. JD Bertrand stepped in and he was the guy that they had to point to. He was the guy, right? And he clearly was not ready to be the guy. You see Hughes goes down and then D. Alford did a pretty solid job stand up. Well, he actually stepped in and he played for Billy Bowman, excuse me. But like you saw CJ Henderson step in and he did pretty well. Kobe Bryant stepped in at times and he did okay, right? Like these guys were all right. But you saw depth issues. Like Zach Harrison struggled with some injuries there late in the season. You saw when I think it was Dorless missed a couple of games. You struggled, right? And injuries are a part of the game, but the difference is when you look at the New England Patriots, you look at the Seattle Seahawks, you look at the Denver Broncos, you look at the LA Rams. Those are teams who have dudes. And then when those dudes go take a break, they sub in more dudes, right? Take a note out of the Philadelphia Eagles book. Like no one's going to be the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs, right? That doesn't exist. It's not real life. It's not NFL. People have their deficiencies. But when Howie Roseman goes and acquires dogs, like not Georgia dogs, but like killers on the defensive line at the trade deadline and just throws them into the mix, they're like, oh, you're like already too deep. How many more do you need? A lot, because the defensive line and just having those guys be so overpowering is the ultimate cheat code on defense. That's why the Seahawks are potentially going to win the Super Bowl. It's why the Patriots went from a team picking in the top 5 to a team who's playing in the damn Super Bowl. It's what got the Broncos there and gave them a chance to win a football game, even though they lost their quarterback. Dominant defense is critical, and it's been consistently a theme of every team who makes it to this point in the playoffs, to the Super Bowl, to the conference championship games, that they have a really solid defensive line. You know, and when it comes to expected points at EPA, they have to have a negative EPA. So they're holding offenses to a negative EPA. That's critical. Falcons are right there. They're close. But that's why you need to double down on the defensive success. You've got a young core, right? And you talk about the guys who the team has in place already. Brandon Dorless. You got James Pierce. You got Jalen Walker. You got guys, right? Ruka Rororo. But you need more interior defensive linemen who you can really go get after the quarterback. Because I'm starting to feel like we're entering a period of time where it is more important to have elite interior pass rushing presence than edge rushers. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Of the top 10 interior pressure players this year, 8 of the top 10 play on the Seahawks or the Patriots. 8 of the top 10. Make no mistake. That is why these teams are playing in the Super Bowl right now. The Falcons are not there. The Falcons, I mean, they took a step closer. I mean, you saw the second year progression of some guys. We're hoping that we're going to see that there from the edge rushers next year, but you need to continue to reinvest. You need to continue to reinvest in the position. And you look at these teams who are top 5 in free agency spending last offseason. You look at Milton Williams, you look at Harold Landry, DeMarcus Lawrence, Robert Spillane. These are guys who they invested heavily in, right? And that's why they continue to find success in the postseason. It's critical. And the Falcons are close, but I think they can get even better. And that starts in free agency and that starts in the draft. The second big thing here, and I'm going to get to your questions and comments. I see some are starting to come in. Number 2 of the 5 keys to get the playoffs or get the Falcons to the playoffs. Number 2, this team needs some receivers, man. This team needs some receivers. I started on defense because that's my big point on defense is this team needs some interior defensive line help, and they need it in a big way because you need to have 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layers, and you need to be able to go deep, right? But wide receiver is a hole just in and of itself because you've got Drake London, he's a stud, right? But Ray McLeod was released in October for off-field issues. Darnell Mooney struggled with injuries, and then it was just right? Like Drake goes for almost 1,000 yards, 12 games, great season. But the moment he goes down with an injury, it was bad. It was really bad because all of the wide receivers combined for 75 receptions, 892 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's just Drake by himself. And when you look at its defensive line play is one, but the single most important stat in the NFL in terms of playoff success, just success in general, is explosive play margin. That is the most important thing. Because when you look at teams number 1, teams number 2, and teams number 3, and teams number 4, it's the Seahawks, it's the Patriots, it's the Rams, and the Broncos in that order. And I believe number 5, the Green Bay Packers, another team who made the playoffs. Bears were right up there with them. The Falcons are 22nd. They're 22nd. And it's because you have a lagging offense. It's because you're not able to explode down the field and make these big plays. Defensively, you're up in the upper half, right? And this is a margin. So, right? So it's your offense minus your defense. So your defense was 14th in the NFL. Your offense was 22nd in the NFL. And there's no reason that you have a quarterback like Michael Penix that you can't explode down the field. That's the thing that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think a lot of that had to do with your lackluster wide receiver play. A lot of that had to do with your lackluster wide receiver play. You didn't have guys who could stretch the field. You didn't have guys who can go down and make the big plays. Like you talk about the Seahawks and you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba. He didn't get a ton of touches. He didn't catch a ton of routes. But when he did, he's popping the top off. You look at Rashid Shaheed. They take the top off. You look at Stephon Diggs. Matt Collins was even doing it for the Patriots. They take the top off. This team needs wide receivers. It's why it was the first free agent article, aside from quarterback. So it was the second free agency article that I wrote, was specifically about the wide receiver position. It's critical. It's critical that they figure out what they're going to do at receiver, because all due respect to Sills and Casey Washington and all these guys, you got some good players. They're fine. They're okay. But they're not NFL wide receivers at the level that they need to be. And that's just all there is to it. All right, I see a super chat, and like I promise, I always go straight to super chats. But it's Rusty, our man Rusty Moore Jr. Over on YouTube. He says, "Good news. Good news is the national media seems to be getting under Michael Penix's skin. My guess is we get his best effort next year in an effort to silence the chatter." I see you. I see it. I saw his post on Instagram. It comes in a direct retaliation to something Stephen A. Smith was saying about him. One of the most foolish things that I've heard just about the whole discourse about Michael Penix going under center. Stephen A. Smith said that it was because he can't bend his knees. I don't know where he heard that. I have no idea where he heard that. Because it's fundamentally wrong. It's completely inaccurate. And you talk about the fact that there was 5 years between his knee injuries. 5 years. This is a guy who ran a 4.5 at his or a 4.59 or something at his pro day. It's a guy who went literally went Superman to score a touchdown against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're telling me that guy can't bend his knees enough to play quarterback? It's a ridiculous sentiment. I don't know where the hell he heard it, but to Rusty's point, maybe it's some fire. Maybe it's some fire. Maybe it's a little edge for Mike. I don't know if he needs it. The dude's a competitor. He's a killer. I don't think he necessarily needs it, but sometimes it helps having somebody who's throwing a little kerosene on an open flame. I think that maybe it'll help Michael Penix. Maybe it won't. Who knows? But I hope it does. I hope it really does. And because I see the potential in Mike. I'd say that Matt Ryan and the rest of the staff, they see the potential in Mike. He's just got to stay healthy. And I've said that many, many times here on this podcast. I've written about it. I've said it on the station at 92.9 The Game. I've been all over the place saying that. The talent is there. The talent is there. And we'll get into that here in this next little bit. He's just got to stay healthy, man. And that's point number 3. So going through the 5 points, the 5 keys to the Falcons competing. Number 1 was double down on the defensive success from 2025. Number 2 is get some weapons at wide receiver. Number 3 is clear. You got to figure out the quarterback position. You got to figure it out. And there is no variable that matters more in the explosive equation than the quarterback position, right? And Penix, he was coming off of the knee injury, or he's going to be coming off of this knee injury. He's already got a learning curve. It's going to be an interesting spot the way he comes back. I want to see how it happens, but it's wild though, because you look at the guy who was playing quarterback at the end of 2024. Those 3 games, his deep throw rate was second in the NFL. He was right there with Josh Allen, and I mean, he's just zipping it, and you saw the gifts that Stefanski raves about, the gifts that the last regime raved about. You saw the potential, and I remember sitting there and going back and watching some of his film. He had some bad misses. I'll give him that. There's a reason he had a couple of interceptions. The interceptions weren't his fault, but he had some bad misses. And I'm like, okay, well, that's something that footwork, that's stuff that's going to come in time. And then he didn't look like that guy. He showed the flashes, right? I mean, you look at what he was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He showed the flashes, and then he just seemed to get rattled. And maybe that's not the right word necessarily, but he just never seemed like he was that guy in 25. And that's where I think coaching plays a pretty important role. That's where I think coaching is something that's going to matter for him moving forward. And maybe to Rusty's point, that can be something that can give him some edge, because if the Falcons want to be playing in the Super Bowl, you got to have a quarterback. If the Falcons want to play the playoffs, you have to have a quarterback. That's just a zero-sum thing. This is the NFL. You have to have a quarterback. It's the most important position on the field. It's the most important position in professional sports. So those are 3 of my 5 keys. I'm going to go through some of your comments here. I promised you I would. Speaking of which, so Eric Noah comes back over here and says, or actually, no, that got me started on it. That's where we left off. So T401 Dive Bomb says, I love the direction they're going. They seem to have a good foundation for the future. I agree. I'm a big fan of Ian Cunningham. If you guys missed it, go check out the last podcast that I did just the other day. I am a big fan of Ian Cunningham. I think it's a tremendous hire. He said all the right things. You talk about winning a press conference. I think Ian Cunningham said the right things, and I'm very excited about him. I'm excited about what it can mean moving forward. Morgan comes through and says, should we go cornerback or defensive line in the draft? Yes. Ultimately, I would not be opposed to. All right. Bear with me for a second. Falcons go all defense in the draft. All defense in the draft again. Like maybe 7th round, something like that, like you did last year. I mean, fine. You just find a scheme fit. All defense. I'm working myself up to this. And Morgan, you might have pushed me over the edge. This team needs a cornerback. They need some depth at the position. That's clear. This team needs defensive line. And I was pretty clear about that. Wide receiver is the only position where I would say if the guy is there, like if you're really sold on Zachariah Branch, which we'll talk about something that could incorporate Zachariah Branch here in just a second. But if you're all in on Zachariah Branch, if you're all in on, Bernard Falls, Brazil Falls, you got a lot of guys who might fall in the 2nd round or maybe even into the later rounds after that. If you're that sold, go get them. Fine, whatever. All the other ones need to be defensive players. You need to get your defensive line. You need that depth at that position. And I would go defensive line first because I think you have something in the 2nd level that you can at least roll with. And I love having a defensive line that just changes games. The biggest detriment for the Falcons last year on defense is that they couldn't stop the run effectively. They struggled a lot against the run. And I need to see a defensive line that's going to get after it. You saw the flashes of it. And when you have a dominant defensive line and pass rush, everything else improves. So that's why I'm going inside out. So to answer your question, I'd do that. So I already talked myself off of the all defense. This team needs a wide receiver. And look, they're going to go wide receiver in the draft, at least one spot. I can't pull myself off of that fact, but they need to draft at least one wide receiver, and they need to add at least one in free agency. And whether that's Alec Pierce, who I think could be a great fit in this offense. I think he'd be tremendous. I think George Pickens is going to be too expensive, even if he does make the free agency market. I think they're just going to tag him in Dallas. I'd be very surprised if they let him go. But I just think that's the way they're going to go. But again, I got mock drafts that are going to be coming out as soon as we finish up. And now we're getting into NFL Combine season. Whew, boy, it's going to be deep. I'm excited about that. T401 Dive Bomb comes in and says, who would this regime want to trade for draft picks this year? I mean, we talked about Jesse Bates last Tuesday. You'd be left with some dead money. I don't think that that's what you want to do when it comes to Jesse, just because of the way his contract is set up, because he has these void years. It's going to cost you in terms of dead cap hit, so he might as well be here. So that tells me that you're not going to trade him. Darnell Mooney doesn't really carry a lot of trade value. And I would assume that you're kind of hoping that he's going to return to more of what he was in 2024. He's going to be a little expensive at this point. He could be a cut candidate, actually, which I'm going to have some more information on that coming out here soon. I just have to take a look at all that stuff. But when it comes down to trading players, who would you trade? I mean, who would you trade? Honestly, are you trading Drake London? He's somebody in the final year of his rookie deal. You could potentially get a second-round pick for him. I would say maybe even I doubt you're not getting a first-round pick because you don't have roster control moving into the next season. So you're not getting a first-round pick. You're probably not even getting a second-round pick. He's very talented, but control is something that matters a lot too. So when you factor in all that stuff, I just don't see it happening. I don't see it working out too well for the Falcons. I just don't see that happening. But that's why at this time, you generally see picks traded for picks, but Falcons don't have a lot of picks. So that's why I was a little encouraged by what I heard from Ian Cunningham talk about trade back in the draft, because you need assets. You need swings. You need swings at the plate. And something that one of the biggest detriments of the Terry Fontenot era is that they would trade up and they would go big swings. And sometimes those big swings would work out great. Other times you train up for Arnold Ebiketie and it doesn't really do much. Right. So I liked the Ian Cunningham comments about that one. But I don't see players getting traded. I could see us trading back in the draft, though, to pick up assets. Oh, one of our subscribers here. Let's see. GATX Boy says, what's going on, GC? What up, man? Falcons family, the new era is here. It's time to rise up and stoop. All right, we'll stoop. JD Black says, we need a free agency and draft wide receiver help ASAP. I agree. No, it's huge. I tried talking myself into going all defense again. I can't do it. You need more explosivity on offense. I literally had just gotten done saying priority number one, to answer your question, John Errol, is explosive offense. Falcons need explosive offense, and they just didn't have enough of it last year. And with a quarterback like Michael Penix, there's no real reason for that. It seemed like, and I'll say this too, and this is going to sound like an excuse. I don't mean to make it sound like that, but when you lose your starting right tackle the last day of training camp, kind of throws you through a tizzy, right? And then you lose your swing tackle the same freaking day. I don't know, what's worse than a tizzy? What's one level up from a tizzy? What's 5 levels up from a tizzy? That's probably where the Falcons were. The collective sigh, the gasp that people heard on the sideline when I saw him there on the far side, and I won't forget it. I sat there sitting next to Mark Ramondi, and I said, oh my God, is that Caleb McGarry? Oh my God. And then it was just immediate, what the hell do they do now? What's next? And all right, Storm Norton, but even like he's been hurt, he's been doing this. Then he's hurt. And then you start the season out, and all of a sudden it's Michael Penix's blind side, and they spent all offseason kind of patting that down a little bit. And then all of a sudden, then they just weren't the same, and I think that not having Caleb McGarry really hurt this offense last year. It really hurt this offense. And then they bungled the recovery of Storm Norton. I think that really screwed him. So moving into next season, I think that's something that Falcons fans can look forward to. That's something that I do think that you can take a next step forward. Just having Caleb McGarry healthy. And I see another super chat. I always jump to super chats first. Big thank you here to Kiera Kiera P says, any word of McGarry, it's ETA. Oh, well, speaking of Caleb McGarry, it says, any word of McGarry is ETA. Thoughts on Jalen Naylor, wide receiver. As far as McGarry goes, I don't know if we ever had a bona fide reason why he was injured. I don't think they ever actually said it. I think we presumed it was something, but I just remember it being lower leg. But no, I don't have any update on that. They don't talk about injured players like that. That's not a comment that they're going to make. But as far as Naylor goes, I'm trying to look at some of his advanced stats here. Oh, he's a Bishop Gorman guy. He's a deep guy, so he can run down the field a little bit. He was in not a great system. He's not an elite type of wide receiver, but he'd be a good depth kind of guy that you can add into the system, and can do a lot of different things, right? I believe he did some punt returns at one point in his career. Yeah, he did. He's returned one punt. I don't know why I thought he was returning punts for some reason, but no. I mean, look, this team needs depth. Kara, this team really needs depth. And I'd say that if you needed to go get a guy like that, then fine. I mean, you just need as many veterans as you possibly can, or at least just professional football players who are, 53-man locks every year. This team was trotting out Casey Washington, and I love Casey Washington. David Sells, I was a big fan of his, right? Those are two guys who fought and clawed their way onto the roster, and they earned their chance to be on a 53-man roster last year. But the deficiencies were very clear. And this team gambled. That was one of the things that I wrote about last summer. I think it was one of the first things that I wrote about, or maybe it was in the offseason, in March or something. I had a radio show on it. I just distinctly remember having a lot of discourse on that this team needed wide receiver depth and they didn't have it. So what happens if you start having these injuries? That happens. And you struggle to get anything going down the field. Big thank you, Kiera. But yes, no, priority number one, going back to John Harrell, priority number one, it is explosive offense. I mean, I went through and I dug into the fact that it's like the teams who have the best explosive play margin in the NFL, those are teams who are consistently winning. So it's stopping the explosive plays on defense, and it's creating them on offense. And those aren't luck things. I mean, you have to create this stuff. Jay Black comes through and says explosive plays come mostly from play action. They come in play action. That's one way that we saw this. The Sean McVay tree actually went completely away from play action until this year. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show the other day, or actually earlier this afternoon, and Robert Mays is fantastic. He does. I mean, you don't want to talk about analytics and the deep stuff of the how and why of professional football. He's one of the best people to do it. He was Nate Tice and all these other guys who were on the show today, or maybe it was a couple weeks. I don't know when the date actually aired. I listened to it today. They went away from play action last year, and you saw some other teams start going away from play action too, and then they go right back to it this year. And I don't think that the Rams had a really high rate of play action. The Patriots do not. So there are a lot of ways that you can create explosive plays. Play action's one of them. But you can also create explosive plays for the run game. And that's something that the Falcons actually did really well. Falcons did a really good job of creating it in the run game, right? I mean, that was the number one thing that Bijan Robinson wanted to come into this season and work on. And he did it. And he's probably the only person who took the step forward this year, right? When it comes to offensive players and explosive plays, right? Bijan was killer. He was a killer. It's just everybody else seemed to regress a little bit. And when Drake was healthy, he was good too. I don't want to take away from what Drake did. But I mean, yeah, but that's what it comes back to. But explosive play margin and any way that the Falcons can find to improve that. You just really hung your hat on Darnell Mooney staying healthy and being the guy that he was last year. And he just wasn't, and you need to find more options. Speaking of Mooney, how do you say your name? Gatx Gaxboy speaks, says cut Mooney and rebuild the wide receiver room around Drake at Casey. Casey Washington was a healthy scratch for basically the entire season. After he came back from his injury, he had a concussion early in the year. Talk about injuries too. He had his concussion early in the year, and then he had a soft tissue issue at one point, and then he was a healthy scratch. I would regularly see Casey, and bless his heart, I'd see him at Flowery Branch after practice on the jugs machine every single day. And that's something that I think is going to help him in the long run. It didn't help him last year, unfortunately. But he struggled, man. And I think he had some issues in practice. We're not able to see that portion of practice, but based off of the ways he was acting after practices, I would say he didn't have good practices, which is unfortunate because he was one of my favorite guys to interview. I did a whole feature on him. I really was looking forward to him putting together a good season. Once he made the roster, I was really excited for him. It just didn't come together, and it's not to say it can't in the future. I mean, he's still a player who he was drafted. He heard his name called. But shoot, he was a healthy scratch last year. Darnell Mooney I don't know what his dead money is offhand. Actually, I'm going to take a look. All right. So according to Spotrac, he's sitting at it's the final year of his deal. I knew that. He's got an $18 million cap hit. Good God. So he's got an $11 million dead cap hit. So if the Falcons did a June 1st designation, a post-June 1 release, it would be, you could spread it out, and the 2026 savings would be about $11 or $12 million. $12 million. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. But if you did a pre-6-1, pre-June 1st release, so if you did it, oh, shoot. Yeah, then you'd have a dead cap of $11 million. You'd have a cap savings of just 7.5. Yeah, so it seems like if you can get it to a post-June 1, then Darnell Mooney would be a cut candidate. It makes it hard to believe that he's going to be a cut before free agency. I just don't necessarily see that being the case. But if they did June 1, that'd be the time to do it, because then you're actually saving enough money, and the dead cap hit is not prohibitively bad, let's say. But he continues, says, add a free agency wide receiver, draft another wide receiver. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. What up, man? Good to see you, my friend. He always comes in. My man, Michael Ronquillo hits us with the double hearts. Hello. Michael Ronquillo says, Matt Ryan was on the Pat McAfee show today. Yes, he was. I made a tweet, actually, about one of the comments that he made. And it popped off very randomly. And I don't know why. People are freaking out about it. It's just saying that he consulted, Matt Ryan said he consulted Joe Flacco about Kevin Stefanski. Why wouldn't he? I don't know why. It was something, he just said it. I thought it was interesting, and I tweeted it. And people were taking this to mean something. I don't know. It was one of the 15 or so different people that Matt Ryan called doing his due diligence. It's called checking references. Hey, Joe Flacco played twice for Kevin Stefanski. He won AP Comeback Player of the Year in 2023 with him and took him to the playoffs, right? He came back, and then he felt so strongly about this guy that he re-signs with him a few years later, and then he got traded after a month. He played 4 regular season games, and they traded his ass. Matt was like, hey, I'm going to call this guy, see what he has to say about him. I think he knows something about this guy, and he did. And he gave a reference. Didn't say what Joe Flacco said. Didn't have to. He just said he called him. That's all. Doesn't mean that Joe Flacco is going to be the next quarterback of the Falcons. Doesn't mean Joe Flacco is going to get a contract in Atlanta. None of those things are true. They might be. We don't know. But none of that was inferred. There's no inferences. It's just a statement of fact. But yes, no, he was on the Pat McAfee show. I enjoyed the interview. He did a great job. He's great on television, man. Matt is great on television. Kira says, I'm all in on trading back. I am too. I think it's going to be a very important thing to do because this team needs assets. This team needs a lot of people, right? They need bodies. I'd say that one of the biggest issues that the Falcons had over the last couple of years is they've had some good star talent, but they've lacked depth. And the depth issues have really come back to bite them. Kira says, what do you think of Jalen Nailor? Oh, then this is your other question. So I got to look into Jalen Nailor. I don't know if Jalen Nailor is necessarily a great wide receiver too. He wasn't the wide receiver two in Minnesota. Jordan Addison obviously was. Naylor could come in here and be a good wide receiver 3. I think if you can get 500-600 yards out of somebody like that, I like that idea because he's got a baseline of somebody who's going to give you 450 yards a year, right? That's good. That's what I want for my wide receiver 3. The wide receiver 3 coming into this season was somebody who had an anomaly season in 2024. It was Ray McLeod, and then obviously disappears, and then has all the off-field stuff happen, and all that went to ish. Trenton comes through, says, G-Money, I thought I missed you. Started at 5:30, man. I missed the show. No, I started at 6 o'clock every Tuesday and Thursday, Trenton. Every Tuesday, Thursday, we like to jump in here and chop it up. But thank you for jumping in. I'm always loving Trenton jumps into the show. John Harrell says, I think it's a must to try and re-sign Caden Ellis. I love the idea of signing Caden Ellis. It'll be hard. You'll be hard pressed to upgrade Caden Ellis, the position. I mean, without paying a lot of money. Like if you want to go get Devin Lloyd, fine. I don't see Devin Lloyd being in the Falcons' future. He's going to cost somewhere between $20+ million or whatever, $22 million. He's going to be expensive. And I'm talking AAV, average annual value. That's going to be very expensive. Caden Ellis is somebody who's familiar in the Ulbrich system, had a great year in the Ulbrich system. He's a leader on the defense. I would love for him to be back. Matching him with Divine Diablo, I love. Also drafting a linebacker like a Jacob Rodriguez, if you wanted to get that up in the front half of the draft, I think that would be great. And speaking of bites at the apple, you need to go get some guys like that. I think getting guys like that you can kind of flesh out and fill out a defense, I mean, that would be really good. But it starts with, retaining guys like Caden Ellis. And I think Caden is definitely one of those candidates. Obi says, I know it won't happen, but trade Robinson and rebuild our department. Yeah. Well, it's not happening. Bijan is not getting traded. I'm not trading Bijan Robinson. There's under no circumstances. I mean, the dude's a finalist for the Offensive Player of the Year. He should win it. By the way, he should win it. It's coming up tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern time. He should win it. But he won't. But he should win it. He led the NFL in scrimmage yards. He was the only tangible offense this Falcons offense had at times. I mean, none of these other guys can hold a candle to what Bijan Robinson did this year, period. I don't care if you're Puka Nacua. I don't care if you're Jackson Smith-Njigba. They had great years. Christian McCaffrey was rated higher in some levels in terms of odds and stuff. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely asinine. And it's because people don't watch the Falcons. They don't watch the Falcons enough. Bijan Robinson is the best offensive player in football, period. Period. I don't think we need a star running back to be a successful team. No, I mean, I see what you're saying, but he's not just a running back, right? So Bijan is not just a back. He's a wide receiver. He's a blocker. He's a gadget player. He can do everything. And he runs the football better than just about anybody in the NFL. The guy does everything. And you want those do-everything guys on your team. He's a new era guy, right? So he and Jahmyr Gibbs are probably that type. Christian McCaffrey was a bit more of the downhill running side of it. And that's really what I want to avoid for Bijan. And I think he's actually a little bit more more durable. He's shown to be more durable. Just in general, I'm talking about McCaffrey versus Gibbs and Bijan. But you look at the way that Bijan is able to absorb contact. It's crazy. It's crazy that he can do what he does and to do it with the strength. That's the other thing about Bijan is that people undervalue just how strong this dude is and how fast he is. He can do everything. That's a guy that you need on your team. He's not just some running back. This isn't paying Tony Pollard money. This isn't paying Javonte Williams money. This isn't paying I can go down the list of these kinds of running backs who are good players. They're good players, but they're not Bijan. Bijan is a weapon, and he's a tool in this game that it does not come along very often. Kiarik says it was his ankle, I think. I believe it was his ankle, but the thing is that I don't know if it was ever officially confirmed. I don't think so. I can check. I'll look into it. It doesn't matter. The point is he should be back. I would imagine by OTAs, but even then it's probably the summertime or something like that. But he should be good. He'll be good to go. Michael Ronquillo comes back and says, Garrett Chapman What are your thoughts about? I love how proper Michael is. He always is so proper here. What are your thoughts on the Broncos wide receiver Marvin Mims? The Denver Broncos have too many wide receivers on the team. I like Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims is another deep threat, a guy who likes to get vertical and go down the field. I actually saw Marvin Mims as a potential breakout candidate last year. It's just, to your point, they have a lot of wide receivers on that team. And I think he would be great here. I think he'd be great. I don't know what his contract situation is. And as you can see, this is all live Q&As, so I am trying to answer your questions as best I can. So he has another year on his deal, it looks like. This is an estimate. I don't know what that would be. Yeah, so he'd be an unrestricted free agent next year. He's in the final year of his rookie deal. So no, he's not going to be a Falcon next year because you're not sending assets. I would be surprised if you send assets to go do something like that. If they could get him, great. I think that he'd be one to look into because he is a talented player, and I think he could add something to this wide receiver room. It's just that would be probably unless you want to trade something, it's going to be a next year discussion for him. Trenton comes back and says, if you take out the few bad losses where we didn't score 10 points, we averaged 27 points per game. That should win 10 games at least. They showed flashes, and unfortunately in the NFL, like they got blanked, right? They got shut out at one point. They had games where the offense didn't get clicking, and those games count just as much as the ones where you scored defensive touchdowns, right? So I can't really get too deep into that kind of logic, Trenton. I understand where you're coming from, but the great offenses show that they can do it consistently, and the better ones, the better teams, even when an offense or defense or somebody else is not having a great day, or maybe the opponent's having just a really good day and they're schemed up perfectly or whatever, there are a lot of factors involved, then the other two phases of the game can pick up and they can put you on their back and go. Too often the Falcons just didn't have that. And you talk about getting this team to the postseason, and we'll get back into my thoughts here. You talk about getting this team back into the postseason. That's what it takes. And too often the Falcons would have at least one unit that lets you down, and they had no real answer for it. So going back through our things, we're 3 into it. So I'm going to get through this as best I can. Double down on your defensive success from 2025. That's point number 1. Got to have some dudes, especially on that defensive line. That's what you really, really, really need to invest in on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, you need to get some weapons at wide receiver. You desperately need some wide receiver weapons. You need to fill out that room. That is a must. You have to do that this offseason. I would imagine that they do something in free agency and in the NFL draft. Next, you figure out the quarterback position. Michael Penix's time is TBD. It's TBD. We don't know when exactly he's going to be back. He talked about him being optimistic that he could be back by week 1. I'll take him at his word for it. But at the same time, that's not the way the NFL works. So you got to figure out who else is going to be. Whether you go get a veteran guy, go get a Jimmy Garoppolo, go get a Joe Flacco, a guy that we talked about, Tyrod Taylor, go get a guy like that to bring in and potentially lead this team through training camp and potentially lead this team into the regular season, at least for the first couple of weeks, see what they can do. And then Penix can potentially take over from there. But you got to figure out the quarterback position, no matter who it is. Point number 4. We talked about the 3 phases, and it's especially true after they changed the kickoff rule. You got to figure out special teams. It's one of the least talked about aspects of winning football games, right? Seattle finished with the NFL's best unit. Patriots finished in the, I think 14th. That was where they were. Maybe they're at least in the top half of the NFL. Falcons finished 29th. And when you talk about missed opportunities last year, a lot of them had to do with failures on special teams. When did the Seahawks game get out of hand? It's when Rashid Shaheed returned the kick for a touchdown. Worked both ways. So it launches the Seattle Seahawks, and then the Falcons plummet. You saw the missed kicks against the Carolina Panthers in week 3. You missed 2 kicks in the first half. You make those 2 kicks, it's 10-6 at halftime. That's a completely different football game. Now, the way they react in the second half, I'd say was an indictment of the coaching staff in general. And it was a sign, unfortunately, of things to come. But you make those kicks and things go a little different. If you don't allow a busted punt, a busted punt, or I believe maybe it was a kickoff or it was a punt. I don't remember what it was in week 1, where the Buccaneers get up in plus field position. It sets up a game-winning drive. You don't even need Younghoe Koo to make a field goal. I mean, these are things that matter a whole hell of a lot. You have to be able to win in special teams, or at least be in the upper half. That's what they have to live. Craig Aukerman, he's going to come and he's going to be the new special teams coordinator. He was with the Miami Dolphins last year. They were good. I believe they finished 7th in EPA. And that's where I ranked it. Like your NFL's best unit, like whatever, it's EPA, expected points added. And look, the Falcons had a revolving door at kicker. It's several different guys, whether it's Ben Sauls, who comes in here for a little time. He didn't actually reach the field, but Zane Gonzalez ended up taking over the job, and Parker Romo and Younghoe Koo. Yeah, you were destined for failure at the kicker spot. But you've also got Bradley Pinion, who's set to be a free agent. You have to make a decision with that. You got to go find a kick returner, man. I said this. I talked about the wasted freaking roster spot that you had last year. And now you're looking at Devin Duvernay. You're looking at Rashid Shaheed. Like there are some guys in this class, this free agency class, that you can come in and they can be instant difference makers, and they can take you to that next level in terms of returns, because we've seen it even in this playoffs. I mean, shoot, man. I mean, how many punt returns or kick returns for a touchdown do the Seahawks have, the Patriots have? I mean, they change football games. And with these new adopted kickoff rules, you have to be there to take advantage. And then you add in the explosive element that these teams have. And that's a play, potentially one play. And I'm not even saying like a 50-yard play, like with the explosives. It just means, I think it's like 12 yards of a run and then like 17 yards passing or something like that. That quantifies as an explosive play, right? Or let me actually make sure that I'm exactly right on that. I want to make ssure I am. Yeah, so it's a passing play of 16 plus yards and a run play of 12 plus yards. You return the ball to the 45-yard line, and then you get a 20-yard passing play. You're in field goal range. Now, we're not talking about, and then on top of that, you're closer to scoring a touchdown, and you're also more likely to go for it on 4th down, which means you're going to be a little bit more aggressive, and you're going to give yourself an opportunity to score more points. Like, they were hidden yards before. It was hidden yards. Now it's like right there, smack dab in your face. You have to have a strong kicking game. You have to be effective at making your kicks. You have to be good in coverage and prevent your opponents from getting those hidden yards. And you got to steal some points, and you have to steal some yards of your own. Falcons were not good at that last year. They were not good at that last year. And it's ironic too, because the Falcons made pretty large investments at those positions, right? You could talk about how much Kadero Hodge was making. You look at the kick returner, the punt returners you bring in. Younghoe Koo was well paid. They made the investment. It just didn't work out. But it's something that really does need to work out. And the last one here, then I'm going to finish off with all of your questions and getting to that. Health. I alluded to this earlier with Caleb McGarry and losing him the last day of training camp. Shoot, man. Darnell Mooney breaks his collarbone. He has surgery on his collarbone after the first day of practices, right? Maybe that was an inauspicious start to the season for the Falcons. But Storm Norton and Michael Penix, who misses half a season, AJ Terrell, Drake London, Bergeron. You look at Chris Lindstrom. You look at Jake Matthews. Neither of them missed games, but they were never the same, right? They had serious injuries that really hurt them. Zach Harrison missed basically the second half of the season. He was your leading sacker for a long time. Jalen Walker missed several games. Troy Anderson, shoot, man, that guy missed the whole season. Billy Bowman popped an Achilles, also missed a game for a soft tissue issue. Mike Hughes missed the last month or so of the season. Injuries are a part of playing football, but dadgummit, you got to stay healthy, man. You got to stay healthy. And on top of just staying healthy, these are prominent players. These aren't depth guys like Storm Norton is, but Storm Norton would have been the starting right tackle. All 32 teams are hoping for health, but the Falcons, man, they're going to be hoping for anything better than what that was last year. Lord. So those are our 5. Stay healthy. Figure out special teams. You got to figure out the quarterback. Go get some wide receivers and double down on some of that defensive depth. All right, I'm going to finish up here just answering some of your questions. If you have something, I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. If you have one that you desperately want to get asked, then make sure to drop a super chat. That's the best way to get it straight to the front of the line. But again, I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. All right, Michael Smith comes through and says, so what do you think is going to happen with the Falcons and Cousins? They're going to cut Kirk Cousins. It's just the cap hit is going to be astronomically large in 2027. It's set up that way. Like they did it intentionally. Most of his money gets paid out in bonuses. He still gets majority of his contract, but he gets to go be a starting quarterback somewhere. He gets to choose for himself. He's the top quarterback on the market, probably. I'd say he probably is. He would become the top quarterback on the market. Him and Daniel Jones, I guess that's your competition. Malik Willis is one maybe. And his market's actually come down a little bit more than I expected. I was pretty bullish on the idea that he wasn't going to be a Falcon. I still don't think he's going to be a Falcon, but I'm less bullish on it than I was earlier. But as far as Kirk goes, he'll be cut halfway through March, third day of the league year, sometime before that. Probably in those 3 days in that little window right there between like March 15th or something like that. But he's not going to be a Falcon. Now, could he re-sign with the team? Yeah, theoretically he could. I don't foresee that to be the case because I don't think he wants to have Michael Penix breathing down his neck all season. That's why he came here in the first place, is he didn't want some team to draft another quarterback for him, excuse me. And they were going to draft some quarterback and he wanted to be the guy. So it didn't work out. And so that's why I would assume he goes somewhere else. Kiara says, Bijan carried our team this year. Yeah, he did. He was fantastic. Michael comes back and says, Bijan Robinson is better than the Falcons have right now at running back. Yeah, they're better than anything that the NFL has at running back. Roy comes through and says, let's see what we do before the draft. It's huge. So that, of course, obviously it's going to impact what the Falcons do in the draft. What they do in free agency matters. What they do on their own team matters. Like, do you extend Kyle Pitts? Do you extend Caden Ellis? Do you, what do you do with D. Alford? There are some viable players on this team who you need to make a decision on. How deeply do you invest in wide receiver in free agency versus defensive line versus all this other stuff? All of that has to matter, and all of that has something to do with the other, and it all correlates. Let's see, John Harrell says, what do you think the Alec Pierce would cost? $20 million. I'd say that's like his projected AAV. He'll be expensive. He's probably the second best wide receiver on the market right now. He's a great downfield threat, man. That guy, you talk about an explosive football player. That is the guy that you want to get in here. You pair him up, and he's got some good size too. You don't find a guy who's 6'4" who goes down the field like he does. I think you look at the size thing about this era of football. Wide receivers are big, man. Like, those are some big dudes right now. And you already got Drake London on one side. You got Alec Pierce on the other. Now, the reality is you'd soon be tying $50-ish million into two players. You're running close to what the Bengals are doing. So that's where I'd get a little concerned specifically with Alec Pierce. I think that Alec Pierce should be a marvelous option. But with Darnell Mooney making $18 million and Drake London set to make $30 every year, somewhere in that range, assuming they do the extension this year, then good God almighty, man, you're looking at a lot of money invested into the wide receiver position. That's going to be very expensive, and it's not very deep. So you still have a lot of those depth concerns. But damn, Alec would be good. If he could stay healthy and you match him up with Drake London, with Michael Penix, that relationship that could blossom into a pretty explosive and fun offense. Kiaris comes through, says, sometimes I think I've had enough of Falcons videos, and then I see you guys live or post another video. Well, I'm glad you keep coming back, Kiara. I'm glad you keep coming back. We just enjoy talking Falcons football, and I'm glad you're here. Michael comes through, says, I read the Indianapolis Colts are trying to re-sign Alec Pierce and trade Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's got a big old cap hit. I don't know how true that is. I didn't see that report. It'd be an interesting one. Michael Pittman would fetch a pretty nice offer from somebody on the open market should he be available. He's pretty damn good. That's a good football player right there. Tyree Maxey says, what quarterback are they trying to get? Remains to be seen. I've got a whole piece coming out on Monday after the Super Bowl, so keep an eye out for that. Make sure to give me a follow at GChapATL if you want to see that one. But also just head on over to Falcons on SI. Make it a daily stop. We have stuff coming out there all the time. Just put a little bookmark in and come check out what we have. But lots of Falcon stuff coming out, and I'll have the latest on some options the Falcons have, but you got to wait till Monday. Kiera says, I hope Michael Penix, eats better this offseason than hot dogs and wings, not helping your health. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Augustino 9 says Falcons need a wide receiver 2 and cornerback 2. I see your master's hat. I'm watching from Augusta, like a mile from the Augusta National. I want to go to Augusta National so bad. It's been on my bucket list for forever. This was a gift, and I probably wear this darn thing. Shoot, it's actually my fiance's. My fiance owns that. I just wear it all the time. So, and it was a gift. So it was a gift to her. And then I just wear it all the time. But I've always wanted to go to Augusta National. It's something that's very high on my bucket list. As somebody who's from Georgia, loves the state. The Masters are right at the core of everything, right? That's the preeminent tournament in this country and really in sports. It's the Masters. Trenton says, is there a world where Alfred plays number 2 and Bowman comes back in his nickel spot? Bowman is is our starting nickel. Billy Bowman's coming off of the Achilles tear. So this is actually a great question, Trenton. Depends on what he looks like coming back. I mean, nickelback is one of the more important positions in the modern NFL because you have all these teams trying to force teams into base defense. Or when they go light, that's when they can just pound the run. The way that offenses are trying to manipulate, if you have a nickel who can be effective in both, I mean, you see this with Nicky Manwari, who's basically just a box safety who can come in and play the nickel if he had to. That's what's made him so valuable for the Seahawks. It's something where I love the idea of Alfred being able to play the number 2. He was a baller last year. And at the very least, he's going to come in and provide you some immaculate depth immaculate, that's a good word. Immaculate depth at the nickel position or at corner. Hughes is still your starting corner. I mean, he's not an elite option necessarily. He's a former first-round pick, but he's not an elite option necessarily. He's got his deficiencies, but I think ultimately, and people may disagree with me on this, I think corner is one of the positions that you can just sort of kick the can down the road a little bit longer. Don't tell Scott I said that because Scott will probably freak out. But I just think defensive line's a bigger need. But yeah, I think D. Alford can absolutely come in and do that. I mean, D's a pretty damn good option. He showed last year how good of an option he can be. But are you going to gamble on him coming back and doing it again? I mean, you need to add at least one solid body to the room. You need at least one good body. It's just, are you going to do that with your second round pick? Or are you going to do that with a day 2 pick or a day 3 pick? That's really what it comes down to. But I don't see them investing in free agency necessarily, but maybe drafting somebody could make sense. Forever Gala says, greetings from Milan, the Olympic capital. Greetings. Have a great time. I don't know what the hell time it would be over there. What time is it in Milan? Jeez, you had a long night. It's 1:00 in the morning. All right. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Team USA, let's go. Let's go take home some gold medals. But welcome in from Milan. Michael Ronquillo, last one from Michael here, says Bijan Robinson is from Tucson, Arizona. Went to Sully at high school and played football for them. Yes. Yeah, no, he's a stud out there, man. He was a killer. Terry Clark says, if we're going wide receiver with 48, I'd love for the Falcons to look at Ant Hill or Goldie Rodriguez to line up next to Diablo. Don't think we keep Ellis. Yeah. So Terry, actually, this is one of those things that I could see potentially if they do move on from Caden Ellis, which he's 31 years old. And he's probably going to be looking for 3 years of commitment. He still has a viable role. I could still see us potentially, or the Falcons drafting somebody early. If a Rodriguez is there, I love Rodriguez. I think he can do everything next to a Diablo. I think that'd be tremendous. But if you can do that and then get Caden Ellis for a reasonable contract, maybe something that's not going to, 3-4 years. I don't want to go that far necessarily. If you can get him on a 2-year deal, I still think that even if he's not your everyday middle linebacker, not every day, but like every down middle linebacker, he doesn't have to be all 3 downs. You can start phasing him in for pass rushing situations and everything else. He has a lot to add. But no, I could still see linebacker being something that they add in the draft on day 2. All right, last question here. This one comes from one of our subscribers, Pamela Johnson. Says, hello, Garrett. I'm curious to see the upcoming moves the organization will make. I understand it's going to be moves that some in the fan base are not going to be happy. Know that the moves are improving the team. Yes. But we hope they improve the team. But it's a new identity. It's a new team. It's something else entirely. So we don't fully know what this new look team is going to be. We don't know how new look they actually are going to be. Because the Falcons don't have a ton of cap space. They have a good bit of cap space. They're like middle of the NFL in terms of cap. But in the next 2 years, they have a ton of cap. So if you want to look at this team potentially lining up their ducks in a row for the next couple of years, I think you can do sort of what these teams have done this year, that invested heavily in free agency. You trade back in the draft, get some assets, continue to build the foundation of your team, and then just go for it next year. Go for it. Lines up that way. It kind of lines up that way because you have a ton of cap space moving forward. But I think it could be a very interesting way of looking at it. But big thank you to all of you. Lots of great questions. We went through our 5 keys to the Falcons reaching the playoffs. Make sure to go back and check that out. Big thank you to all of you guys. You guys make this possible. And I really do appreciate all of you, whether you're watching on Twitter, on Facebook, or on YouTube. It's an absolute pleasure having you guys jump in here every Tuesday and Thursday. And I just love chopping it up with you guys. And it keeps me on this everything. And I've had a lot of fun. We'll get into some more discussion on this coaching staff coming up next week. I do want to talk about this offensive staff and the experience that they bring and why it gets me excited about what could be coming in 2026 in terms of development and everything looking forward. There's a lot to be excited about, but we'll do that Tuesday. Till then, make sure to give me a follow at GChapATL. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. We had almost 100 people watching on all platforms. We got 1 like, man. Come on, throw some likes. I really appreciate you guys. Big thank you to all of you who did jump in here. But make sure to check out all the content that we have coming out over there on Falcons on SI. We have stuff coming out right after the Super Bowl finishes up. How can the Falcons get back to the playoffs? What free agency moves could be coming up? We'll talk about all that. But till then, big thank you to all of you. My name is Garrett Chapman. This is the Falcons Podcast with Garrett Chapman. Till next time.